So in this video, we're going to go over creating a block like this. We're going to make it so if you jump and hit the block from the sides or from the top, it doesn't do anything. But if you hit it from the bottom, it's going to change the color like that. And it's going to spawn an object. And then this object here, we can interact with, and then it's going to do something for us. It's going to double our player size like so. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started with that. All right, so we're going to start off by creating a block that we're going to use to spawn in the power up objects. So I'm going to use a 2D object. I'm going to go into sprites and I'm just going to use a symbol square. Then I'm going to move it over here towards the player so we can use it to test a little bit easier here. Then we're going to add a couple of components in here. So we're going to want to add in a box collider. So we'll do box collider 2D. And then we're also going to want to add in a rigid body. So I'm going to do rigid body 2D. And then I'm also going to rename this and I'm going to call it power up block. And then here inside of the rigid body, we're going to want to come down here and freeze the position on the X, Y, and then freeze the rotation of the Z axis. We're also going to want to set the body type to kinematic. And then we're going to want to add in our material here of the ground friction that we've been using. And we're also going to want to scroll up and put this on the ground layer. So then once we have all of that, I'm going to take this and drag it into our prefabs folder to create a prefab for it. Next, we're going to want to add the item that we're going to be using for the prefab. And I'm simply going to continue using the package that we have here installed so far, and I'm going to come into our coin animation and I'm going to select this one here. I think this one looks pretty good for our little power up item. And then I think I'm going to scale this one down just a little bit. So I'm going to expand the transform. You can click this little thing here and that's going to allow you to change them all at the same time. So I'm going to change it to maybe a 0.75 just so it's a little bit smaller than the block there. I think that looks good. And then now I'm going to take this and drag this into our prefabs folder as well. And then for now, that should be all we need to do with the coin. And then I'm going to delete that from our scene for now. And then one last thing with our power up block here, we should go ahead and maybe change this color. Maybe we'll do something. I'm going to use the color picker and maybe something like that color for now. Next up, we're going to want to create a new script. So we're going to go to our scripts folder and we'll go ahead and create a new script. And this one we're going to call power up block controller. And we'll want to go ahead and attach that to our power up block. So first we're going to want to go ahead and clear up our update as we won't be using that. And then we're also going to remove that comment there. So this will be a little bit of a longer script here, so I'll try and explain everything the best that I can. At the top here, we're going to need to get a couple of different references. So we're going to need to we'll do a serialized field for the first one, and this is going to be of a type game object, and we're going to call this one the power up prefab. And that's just going to be a reference to the power up prefab, so the little coin object. And then we're going to do another serialized field here, and this one's going to be of type float, and this one's going to be our power up speed, and this is going to be the speed at which the power up is going to emerge from the block. And then we'll do another serialized field, and this one will also be a float, and then this one's going to be the power up height. So this is going to be the height above the block that we want to have the power up go to. And then we'll do another serialized field. And this one is going to be of type color. And I'll simply call this one the activated color. So this is going to be the color of the block after the power up is spawned. So we'll make the block change color so we know that it's been activated already. And then next we're going to want to make a private bool. And this one we're going to call has spawned power up. And I'm going to set this one to false by default. And this is going to be a flag to track whether or not the power up has been spawned. And then we'll want one more private here. And then this one's going to be the sprite of type sprite renderer. And we're just going to call it sprite renderer. And this is just going to be a reference to our sprite renderer. So then down here in start, we'll actually get that reference for the sprite renderer. So we'll do sprite renderer equals get component with sprite renderer in there. So we're going to need to do a couple of things here to make this work how we want it to. The first thing I'll set up is we want to check if the collision is happening from the bottom. So for that, we're going to do a private bool. And this is, we're just going to simply call this one is collision from bottom. And then in here, this is going to take in the collision 2D. And then we'll just say collision. And then I'm going to type this out here, and then we'll kind of explain it, but we're going to say for each. And then we're going to want to do contact point 2D, and we'll say contact. And then in the collision.contacts, we're going to want to run an if statement. So then we're going to say if the contact normal dot y is greater than 0.5 f, then we will return true. Then otherwise we're going to return false. So here we're setting up the method which is going to take in the collision 2D object, which is going to be named collision, as the parameter here. And then it's going to return a Boolean. It's type Boolean. And then here we're going to cycle through a loop here, and then go through each contact point. So each contact point 2D, which is just a contact point between the two colliders that are involved in the collision. And then we're checking the normal here to see if it's less than 0.5 f, and if so, we're going to return true, and then otherwise we're going to return false. And then this is basically saying if the contact, or if this normal dot y is happening, if it's greater than 0.5, it's going to be coming from something like towards from the top this kind of way. So it's not going to be coming from the bottom. And now next, we're going to go ahead and set up a coroutine for the spawn power up. And so what we'll do is we'll just type in IE numerator. And then we're going to call this spawn power up. And so that we're going to have to do a few different things in here. The first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to calculate the position to spawn the power up above the block. So that one's going to be a vector2, and we're going to call this one spawn position. And that's going to be equal to our transform dot position plus a vector3 dot up, and we're going to multiply that by our power up height. And then next we're going to want to instantiate the power up game object at the spawn position, and we're going to want to do that with no rotation. So to do that one, we're going to do a game object type, and we're going to call this one power up, and that's going to equal, and here we'll do instantiate, and we're going to instantiate the power up prefab at the spawn position. And for the rotation, we're going to do quaternion dot identify, or identity. And then we're going to want to calculate the target position where the power up should stop moving upwards. So this is going to be another vector2, and this is going to be the target position. And that's going to equal the spawn position plus the vector2 dot up. And we're just going to multiply that by 1f for now, and we can adjust that if we want to. And next we're going to want to animate the power up, so make it move upwards until it reaches the target position. So here we're going to create a while loop. So while the power up is not null, and the power up dot transform dot position dot y is less than our target position dot y, then we're going to want to move the power up upwards based on like our specific speed. So we will do the power up dot transform. In here we use dot translate, and this is going to be a vector2 dot up, and we're going to multiply that by the power up speed, and we're going to use time dot delta time. And then after that, we'll do a yield return null here to give the control back to the coroutine scheduler. And then the last thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set up the on collision enters. So we're going to kind of bring all this together here. I'm going to go up here and do this. So I'm going to call this is going to be private void, and then this is going to be, again, like I said, the on collision enter 2D. And so here we're going to need to check if the power up has already been spawned, if the collider belongs to the player, and if the collision occurs from the bottom of the block. So this is going to be just an if statement. And here we're going to say if exclamation point has spawned power up. So if we have not spawned the power up, then and the collision dot collider dot compare tag, and we want to be looking for the player tag, and it is the collision from the bottom. So, and then we'll have to put in collision there. So if all of that is true, then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to do the we'll do start coroutine, and then we're going to enter in the one that we created, so the spawn power up. And then we're also going to want to set the has spawned power up to true. And then we're going to want to, the last thing is to change the color of the block to the activated colors. So here we're going to say if the sprite renderer does not equal null, so if there is a sprite renderer, then the sprite renderer dot color is going to equal the activated color. So now once that's done, we can go on to our player here, and we're actually going to need to make sure we change this to the player, so it's tagged as the player. And then we already put the script on here, but we're going to have to set these things up. So our power up prefab, we're going to want to go into our prefabs and drag in our coin. And then the power up speed and power up height, I'm just going to set them to 1 for now. And then we'll adjust them as needed. And then our activated color, I'm going to just select maybe this brown here. And then one thing to watch out for this, for some reason, this is set to 0, so it would show up. It would just make this transparent. Make sure you turn this to all the way to the right there if you don't want it to be transparent. And then we'll go ahead and we'll test this out. So if we go over here and we run and we jump from the top first, it's not doing anything from the side either. If we hit it from the bottom, it pops the coin up and it changes colors like we would expect. So then now we'll need to go ahead and start working on the coin part to make it actually, we'll do it when we pick it up. It's going to, I guess, I don't know, we'll start with like doubling our player size. So next up, we're going to make the coin trigger the power up. So here we're going to go into our prefab and select our coin, and we'll want to make sure that we add a box collider 2D here. And then want to make sure that we mark this as is trigger. So we're going to use on trigger enter instead of collision. And then we're going to go ahead and create a new script, and we're going to call this one, we'll just call it power up. And then we'll go ahead and attach that to our, and then we'll attach that to our coin here. Like so. All right, so this one's going to be quite a bit shorter than the other one. In here, the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get a reference to the scale that we want to increase. So we're going to do a serialized field again, and this is going to be a vector vector 3, and we'll call this one player scale increase, and I'm going to set that equal to a new vector 3. Oops. And this is just going to be the size of how big we want it to increase. I want it to double, so I'm just going to do 2f, 2f, and then just we'll leave z alone. And then here we're going to want to create a the onTriggerEnter2D method. So we'll do private void, and then onTriggerEnter2D. And then inside here we're going to want to say, you know, what we want to happen. So we'll do if, and this is going to be if the collision dot compare tag is the player. So if we're colliding with the player, and what we want to do is we want to apply the power up effect. So do whatever we want that to be. And then we want to destroy the power up game object. So what we'll do is we'll just type in apply power up effect, we'll call this, and this is going to be a method, but this is going to take in the collision .game object, and this doesn't exist yet, but we'll create this here in just a moment. And then we're also going to want to destroy, and we're just going to simply destroy the game object. So this game object. So then now for this method, you can do this a couple different ways. You can either type it up down here, or you can hover over this, select this, and just generate the method, and it will create it down here for us. So what we'll want to do, we're going to go ahead and remove this because we don't need that. But then here we're going to say how we're going to apply the power up effect. So what we're going to do, what we'll need to do is we'll need to get the current scale of the player. So this is going to be a vector 3. We're going to call this current scale. And that is going to equal our player so not player game object. I'm actually going to change this to player just so it makes a little bit more sense. So this is going to be our player dot game object dot local scale, and by game object I mean player dot transform. So we're going to get our local scale from our player's transform. And then what we're going to do is we're going to scale the player by multiplying each component of the current scale with the corresponding amount of the scale increase vector. So the numbers that we did at the top. So these numbers here. So what we'll do is we're going to say the player.transform.local scale is going to equal a new vector 3. And then I'm going to do it like this because it'll be a little bit easier to read, I think. Oops. If I put it on these lines like this. So we're going to do the current scale dot x, and we're going to multiply that by the scale we created up there. So the player scale increase dot x, and we're going to need to do that for the y and the z. So we'll just copy this, paste this in twice, and then here we're going to want to do this for the y. So I'll change this one both to y's, and then this one here will be z. And then we have an extra comma we don't want there. So that's gonna pretty much be it. So this should now, as long as we collide with the player, it's going to apply our power up effect, which is going to take our current scale and then multiply it by our player scale increase up here. So then it should double the size of our player. So if we jump back in here and click on play, what we can do is we'll do this and jump. It changes the color. That's all still working. We can't continue to spawn it, which is good. And then if we do interact, it does double our size like we would expect. So obviously in the game, we'll want to move this up a little bit, but it looks like it's doing what it's supposed to do. So I'm gonna actually come back in here, grab the power up block. Maybe we don't want it right there. Maybe we'll want it after the first jump. So I'll go over here, maybe move it up just a little bit there. Not too much. And then, yeah, I think that'll pretty much do it for this episode.